Do you remember learning about how pearls are formed? It happens when an irritant works itself into an oyster or clam. As a way to protect itself, the oyster coats the irritant, layer upon layer, until a pearl is formed and something of high value and beauty is created. In life and on teams, we encounter many irritants, and as a wise colleague once told me, sometimes you get a pearl, sometimes you just get a rash. Differences between people are one of the major sources of friction on teams. Among other things, there are differences in the way we think and process information, the ways we use time, how we handle emotions, how we manage conflict, the pace at which we like to work, and how we handle opinions that are different from our own. All of this can lead to tension. The difficulty that I see is that we frequently attribute tension between team members to character flaws or irreconcilable differences between people. But maybe it's just a difference in style. Fortunately, there are tools to help us understand our differences and find ways to be better able to communicate and collaborate with others. One of these tools is called People Styles, and it's featured in this book by Robert Bolton and Dorothy Grover Bolton, who build on the concept of social styles, which has been studied since the 1960s. That research shows that certain behavior can be predicted by the presence of other behavior, because behavior comes in clusters. If a person exhibits one behavior, it's often accompanied by a whole cluster of other related behaviors. Using the concept of clusters, researchers were able to narrow down just 2 behavioral dimensions to measure in order to understand and predict people's behavior. The first dimension is assertiveness. Think about it as a scale that moves from less assertive on the left to more assertive on the right. Assertiveness is the degree to which one's behavior is seen as directive or forceful. More assertive does not mean more aggressive, and less assertive does not mean submissive. People higher on the assertiveness scale simply demonstrate more energy, they move faster, they use gestures, they use a lot of eye contact and lean forward, they speak rapidly and louder, they tend to make decisions more quickly, and are more risk-oriented and confrontational. They also get angry more quickly. Responsiveness is the second dimension. Think of this as an intersecting scale that moves from less responsive at the top to more responsive at the bottom. People who are more responsive tend to express feelings more openly, they appear more friendly, they use more facial expression and vocal inflection. They use more stories to get their point across versus facts and logic. They tend to be more people-oriented versus task-oriented, and they like working with other people. When a person is evaluated based on whether they are more or less assertive than half the population, and whether they are more or less responsive than half the population, we end up with 4 quadrants and 4 social styles or people styles: analytical, amiable, driver, and expressive. Each of these is its own blend of assertive and responsive, and while each of us has characteristics of each style, we all have one dominant style. These styles explain things like why someone insists on having so much detail, while someone else can never seem to get to the point, and someone else is always there to come up with the ideas, but leaves someone else holding the bag when it's time to do the work. These kinds of things are actually style differences. There are a few key ideas worth mentioning. None of these styles is better or worse than the others. Each has its own strengths and weaknesses. Each of us has a dominant style. Our population is evenly distributed across the 4 styles. 25% of the population is analytical, 25% drivers, 25% expressive, and 25% amiable. People in each style can be successful. Notably, the behavior patterns of one style tend to trigger stress in the other 3 styles. In fact, if we are very different from one another, not only do we have trouble developing rapport and communicating, we're also highly likely to irritate each other just by being ourselves. Finally, it's helpful to understand and relate to other people's styles. If we know our own styles and we have a sense of other people's styles, we can then start to make determinations about strategies to respond to various tensions. In order to help you figure out your own style, I'd like to introduce you to the People Styles at Work assessment. It's a 4-page document that you can download and print after you watch this video. Or maybe you already printed it, depending on your style. It will take you no more than about 10 minutes to complete. The first page is simply information and context. The second page has instructions for how to fill out the assessment. The assessment itself appears on the second and third pages. The fourth page is a scoring sheet, and it's here that you'll be able to tally up your scores and begin to determine whether you're an analytical, driver, amiable, or expressive. Please note, those words are not judgments, they're just names given to these different styles. Now, the way you do this assessment is to think about yourself, not from your own perspective or how you want to be seen, but you should think about the answers from the perspective of how you think other people see you and experience you. I'll say that again. It's not about how you think of yourself or the kind of style you think you are, but it's about how you come across to other people. Also, we're generally not very good at assessing our own styles accurately, so you should also print out a couple of extra copies of this assessment and give them to 2 other people you know and trust. Ask them to do the assessment on your behalf and evaluate you on these 18 questions. You should then consider the results of all 3 assessments to develop your working theory about which is your dominant style. Now you're ready to do the assessment. When we come together next, we will be discussing the results of your assessment, and I'll give you some information to help you understand some of the characteristics exhibited by each style, and we will also talk about how each of the styles behaves under stress, and some strategies for responding to other people's styles. That's it for now. Have fun with your assessment, and I'll talk to you soon.